Captain Gray stood at the observation deck of his massive starship, his scaled fingers drumming against the reinforced glass as he watched the blue planet rotating slowly beneath him. Earth, as the locals called it, looked deceptively peaceful from up here. His thin lips curved into what passed for a smile among his species. "Computer, show me the subject again," he commanded, his voice carrying the distinctive metallic undertone of his race. A holographic display materialized before him, showing a human male in his mid-30s working on some primitive machinery at a space station. Tom Wilson. Age: 34. Occupation: maintenance engineer at International Space Station Beta. Gray had chosen his target carefully. After 3 months of secret surveillance, he had identified this human as the perfect test subject. Not too prominent to be missed immediately, but with enough technical knowledge to be useful. The human worked alone on the night shift, fixing everything from life support systems to waste management units. "Absolutely perfect," Gray muttered to himself. In his 200 years as an overseer for the Dominion, he had enslaved 12 different species. Each conquest had earned him prestige and power among his people. But humans would be his masterpiece. The door behind him slid open with a soft hiss. Captain, his second-in-command, Officer Reed, called out. "The preliminary analysis of human physiology is complete." Gray turned, his silvery eyes reflecting the Earth's blue glow. "Report." "They're physically weak compared to most spacefaring races," Reed began, his antenna twitching with excitement. "Low bone density, minimal protection against radiation, no natural weapons or defensive capabilities. They tire easily and require frequent rest cycles." "Vulnerabilities?" Gray asked, already imagining how easy this conquest would be. "Several, sir. They need constant oxygen intake, regular hydration, and their temperature tolerance is remarkably narrow. Without their protective technology, they would die in most planetary environments." Gray walked over to his command chair, settling into it with practiced grace. "And their technology level?" "Primitive, sir. They've barely reached their own moon. Their most advanced space station is held together with outdated welding techniques and mechanical fasteners. They still use combustion engines for planetary travel." Reed's voice carried a note of disdain. "Show me the subject's work schedule again," Gray ordered, and a new hologram appeared, displaying Tom Wilson's routine. Every night, from 2300 to 700 Earth hours, he worked alone in the maintenance section of the space station. A perfect window of opportunity. "Sir," Reed ventured, "if I may ask, why start with just one human? Our ships could easily—" Gray raised a hand, cutting him off. "Because, Reed, the best way to conquer a species is to understand them first. One test subject, properly studied, can reveal more than 1,000 battlefield encounters." He stood up and walked back to the window. "Besides, the Dominion Council requires proof of a species' usefulness before authorizing a full invasion. This human will provide that proof." Reed nodded, his antenna drooping slightly in submission. "The contract is prepared according to your specifications, sir. All the slavery clauses are hidden in the subparagraphs, disguised as standard employment terms." "Excellent." Gray's eyes narrowed as he watched the space station come into view, a tiny artificial star moving across Earth's night side. "These humans are so eager for advanced technology, so desperate to reach the stars. They'll sign anything if we dangle the right bait in front of them." He turned to face Reed, his expression hardening. "Prepare my shuttle. I'll make first contact tomorrow during his shift. Remember full stealth protocols. We don't want to alert Earth's primitive detection systems." As his subordinate hurried away, Gray returned to studying Tom Wilson's hologram. The human looked so ordinary, so unremarkable. Just another worker drone in their primitive society. Gray had enslaved far more impressive-looking species without any trouble. "Soon," he whispered to the hologram, "you'll be the key to your entire species' submission. And you won't even know what hit you until it's too late. Little did Captain Gray know, but his perfect plan was about to meet its match in the most unexpected way possible. Tom Wilson was halfway through fixing a faulty air recycling unit when the lights in the maintenance bay flickered. He paused, wrench in hand, and looked up at the ceiling. The International Space Station beta wasn't known for electrical problems. That was odd. The tool floated out of his hand in the zero gravity as a soft humming filled the air. Tom grabbed for the wrench, but stopped when a section of the wall simply disappeared. Through the strange opening stepped a tall, silver-skinned figure in what was unmistakably an advanced spacesuit. "Good evening, Mr. Wilson," the alien said in perfect English. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance." Tom's first reaction surprised even himself. Instead of fear or shock, he felt annoyed that he'd have to recalibrate all the sensitive equipment in the bay after that energy surge. "You've just interfered with about 6 hours of maintenance work," he said, catching his floating wrench. "I hope you have a good reason." The alien seemed taken aback by this response, his silvery eyes blinking rapidly. "I am Captain Gray of the merchant fleet. I come with an opportunity that could change your life." Tom noticed how the alien suit had no visible seams or fasteners. Fascinating engineering. "Would this opportunity explain why you've been watching the station for the past 3 months?" Now it was Gray's turn to be surprised. "You knew of our presence." The station's electromagnetic sensors picked up some unusual readings. Nothing concrete enough to report, but Tom shrugged. "I like puzzles." Gray recovered quickly, his thin lips forming what might have been a smile. "Then you'll appreciate this." He raised his hand, and a holographic contract appeared in the air. "How would you like to work with technology centuries ahead of Earth's current level?" Tom watched as the hologram displayed images of incredible machines, advanced propulsion systems, and automated repair units that seemed to defy physics. His eyes lit up, but not for the reasons Gray assumed. "The pay is substantial," Gray continued smoothly, "and you'll have access to knowledge most humans won't see for generations." "What's the catch?" Tom asked, although he was already scanning the floating contract, his mind working faster than he showed. "Just standard confidentiality agreements. Nothing too restrictive." Gray's voice was like honey. "Think of it as a consulting position. Your expertise in maintaining Earth-based systems could be valuable to us." Tom noticed how the alien emphasized primitive, trying to play to human insecurities about their technology level. Interesting strategy. He also noticed how the contract's text seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles, as if hiding additional layers of information. "Mind if I read through it?" Tom asked, making the show of squinting at the holographic text. "Of course, take your time." Gray's confidence was evident. After all, how could a simple human maintenance worker understand the complexities of their legal system? Tom methodically read each section, occasionally asking questions that seemed to amuse Gray. "This part about perpetual service, that's just lawyer talk for a long-term contract." "Right." "Precisely," Gray answered, his antenna twitching slightly. "Just standard corporate terminology." After 20 minutes of careful reading, Tom reached for the floating signature panel. "Well, Captain Gray, this looks like an opportunity I can't refuse." Gray watched in satisfaction as Tom signed his name. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. The human had no idea he'd just signed away his freedom, his future, and potentially his entire species' independence. "Welcome aboard," Gray said, extending his hand in what he'd learned was a human gesture of agreement. "Shall we go see your new workplace?" Tom took the alien's hand, his grip firm. "Lead the way, Captain. I can't wait to get my hands on all that advanced technology." As they walked through the shimmering portal to Gray's ship, both alien and human wore secret smiles, each believing they had the upper hand. Only one of them was right. The moment they stepped onto Captain Gray's ship, the alien's polite demeanor changed. His silver eyes narrowed, and his fake smile disappeared. The corridor lights dimmed to a menacing purple glow. "Now that the formalities are complete," Gray said, his voice turning cold, Let me explain your true position here, human. Tom looked around the corridor with apparent fascination, seemingly ignoring the alien's change in tone. Interesting atmospheric controls you have here. The light spectrum shift must help with power conservation. Gray slammed his hand against a wall panel, bringing up the contract hologram again. This time, the hidden layers of text became visible, glowing in angry red. Do you see this? You've signed yourself into eternal servitude. You are now my property. Oh, that. Tom nodded calmly while examining a nearby door mechanism. Yeah, I noticed the hidden text when I was signing. The light refraction gave it away. Pretty clever, actually. Gray's antenna stood straight up in shock. You knew. Well, sure. Tom turned to face the alien, still looking completely unworried. The contract had microtext embedded in the 3rd and 7th paragraphs. Classic misdirection technique. Though I have to say, using quantum lock text was a nice touch. We haven't figured that out on Earth yet. Officer Reed emerged from a side door, pointing a weapon at Tom. Sir, should I take the slave to the holding cells? Not yet, Gray said, studying Tom with growing unease. I want to know why you signed if you knew the truth. Tom shrugged, his eyes now fixed on the weapon Reed was holding. That's an interesting design. Energy-based weapon, right? But you've got the power coupling exposed on the side. Seems like a safety hazard. Reed instinctively looked down at his weapon. Gray hissed in frustration. Stop changing the subject. You are now a slave. Property. Do you understand what that means? Of course, Tom replied, finally meeting Gray's gaze. I'm to maintain your ship's systems, correct? That's what all the extra clauses were about. Though I noticed you left out specific details about which systems I'm allowed to access. Bit of an oversight there. Gray's confidence began to crack. This wasn't how humans were supposed to react to enslavement. Where was the fear? The begging? The breakdown he'd seen in so many other species. Take me to the main engineering section, Tom said cheerfully. Might as well start learning the systems I'll be working with. Unless you prefer your new slave to be inefficient. Gray exchanged glances with Reed. This wasn't going according to plan at all. But what could one human possibly do? Their technology was primitive, their understanding limited, wasn't it? Very well, Gray said finally. Reed, escort our new worker to engineering. But watch him carefully. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Tom kept asking questions about every system they passed. Each question seemed innocent enough, but something about his intense interest made Gray's scales itch with discomfort. One more thing, Tom said as they reached engineering. The contract mentioned something about daily maintenance reports. Who should I submit those to? You're asking about paperwork? Now, Gray couldn't believe his ears. Well, if I'm going to be a slave, I might as well be an organized one, Tom replied with a slight smile. Efficiency is important, right? As Gray watched his new slave walk into the engineering bay, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd made a terrible mistake. But it was too late now. The contract was signed, and soon this troublesome human would learn his place. What Gray didn't realize was that Tom was already exactly where he wanted to be, surrounded by the most advanced technology in the galaxy, with full access rights granted by the very contract meant to enslave him. 3 days into his slavery, Tom sat cross-legged in front of an open panel in engineering, surrounded by holographic displays showing the ship's systems. His fingers moved quickly across the alien interfaces, his eyes scanning the data streams with practiced ease. Slave, Officer Reed's voice boomed from the doorway. What are you doing with those security systems? Just running diagnostics, Tom replied without looking up. Did you know your main defense grid has 3 conflicting command protocols? That's probably why it takes 0.3 seconds to activate in emergencies. Reed stormed over, his weapon raised. You're not authorized to access security systems. Actually, Tom pulled up the contract hologram, which he'd taken to carrying around. Section 7. Subsection C states that I'm responsible for maintaining all ship systems critical to operation and survival. Your security grid is connected to life support. Therefore, it falls under my jurisdiction. Reed's antenna twitched in confusion. He wasn't used to slaves who could quote contract terms from memory. Captain Gray will hear about this. Please tell him, Tom said cheerfully. I'd love to discuss the redundancy issues I found. Did you know humans have been working on AI safety protocols since the 20th century? Fascinating stuff. After Reed stormed out, Tom allowed himself a small smile. What these aliens didn't know, what wasn't in any of their surveillance reports, was that he wasn't just a maintenance engineer. Back on Earth, he held 3 degrees: mechanical engineering, artificial intelligence, and robotics. His simple maintenance job had been cover for testing new AI safety systems on the space station. Captain Gray arrived 15 minutes later, looking furious. What is the meaning of this? You were assigned to basic maintenance only. Oh, good, you're here, Tom said, standing up and stretching. Take a look at this. He pulled up a complex diagram of interconnected systems. Your ship's AI has no failsafes. One small error could cascade through all connected systems. On Earth, we solved this problem decades ago with something we call boxed AI protocols. Gray's eyes narrowed. You understand our AI systems. Well, the principles are universal, Tom explained, pointing to different parts of the diagram. See, you've got quantum processing here, neural networks there. It's just more advanced versions of what we use. The basic architecture is similar. That's impossible, Gray muttered. Your species barely has functional computers. Tom hid his amusement. If only Gray knew about the quantum computers hidden in research labs back on Earth, or the advanced AI systems already operating in secret. Humanity had learned long ago to keep their true capabilities hidden. I can fix these issues, Tom offered. Make everything run more smoothly. After all, an efficient ship means an efficient slave, right? Gray found himself nodding before he caught himself. Something wasn't right here. This human was too confident, too capable. But the improvements Tom had already made to several ship systems were undeniable. Power efficiency was up 15%, and response times had improved across all systems. Very well, Gray said finally. Continue your work, but remember your place, slave. As Gray left, Tom returned to the system's display. Within hours, he had gained access to every major ship function through his maintenance work. The aliens' overconfidence in their technology's superiority had left them blind to its vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities that any first-year computer science student on Earth would have spotted. Time to move to Phase 2, Tom whispered to himself, initiating a series of hidden subroutines he'd carefully embedded in the ship's systems. On his display, tiny changes began spreading through the ship's network like a digital web, all while appearing as routine maintenance operations to the aliens' monitoring systems. The real question wasn't whether Tom could take control of the ship he already had. The question was how long it would take his alien masters to realize they weren't the ones in charge anymore. 2 weeks into his captivity, Tom had become an essential part of the ship's operations. The alien crew members no longer looked at him with disdain. Instead, they sought him out for help with various systems problems. Even Officer Reed had started treating him with reluctant respect after Tom fixed the persistent glitch in his quarters' temperature controls. Captain Gray watched all this with growing unease from his command chair. Something isn't right, he muttered, reviewing the ship's performance logs. Every system was running better than ever, but that only made him more suspicious. Captain, a junior officer called out, we have another systems update request from the human. Gray's antenna twitched irritably. What is it this time? He says the ship's emergency protocols need reorganizing for better efficiency. He's already drawn up the plans and... Enough. Gray slammed his fist on the armrest. Take me to him. Now. They found Tom in the main engine room, surrounded by floating holographic displays. He was humming to himself while typing on multiple interfaces simultaneously. "What are you doing?" Gray demanded. "Oh, hello, Captain," Tom said cheerfully. "Just finishing up the new emergency protocols. Did you know your old system took 12 steps to initiate emergency life support? I've got it down to 3. Want to see how?" "No, I don't want to see how." Gray's voice echoed through the chamber. "You're supposed to be a slave, not running my entire ship." Tom spun in his zero-gravity chair to face the captain. "But isn't an efficient slave better than an inefficient one? Look at these performance numbers." He pulled up a new display showing various graphs and charts. Engine efficiency up 40%, power consumption down 25%, response times improved by 60% across all systems. Gray studied the numbers with growing confusion. Everything Tom said was true. The ship was running better than ever. Several crew members had gathered at the entrance, watching the exchange with interest. "Sir," one of them spoke up, "the humans' improvements saved my life yesterday. When my suit malfunctioned on the outer hull, his new emergency protocols activated backup systems instantly. The old system would have been too slow." Other crew members began nodding and sharing similar stories. Tom had helped them all in some way over the past 2 weeks. Gray's authority was slipping. He could feel it. "This is irrelevant. He's still a slave. Actually," Tom interrupted, pulling up another holographic display, "I think you'll find that's not quite true anymore." He pressed a few buttons, and suddenly every screen in the engine room changed. "You see, while I was improving your systems, I also took the liberty of analyzing your contract's code structure." Gray's eyes widened as he saw his own contract system displaying on the screens. "That's impossible." The quantum encryption was quite impressive, Tom finished. "But you forgot one thing. By giving me maintenance access to all critical systems, you also gave me access to the contract enforcement protocols. They're part of the ship's core functions, after all." Tom pressed another button, and new text began scrolling across the screens. "I've spent the last 2 weeks embedding new commands into the system. Every update I installed contained a piece of my own code. And now..." The screens flashed, and suddenly Gray's personal contract appeared, the one marking him as the ship's legal owner. Tom made one final keystroke, and the contract began to dissolve. "What have you done?" Gray whispered. "I freed everyone," Tom said simply. "Not just myself, but every being listed in your slavery database. The contracts are void. And the best part," he gestured to the washing crew, "they all helped me do it, whether they knew it or not. Every time they approved one of my updates, they were actually authorizing another piece of the override code." The crew members looked at each other in shock, then back at Tom, then at their captain. For the first time in his long career, Captain Gray found himself completely speechless. The silence in the engine room was broken by the sound of Captain Gray laughing. It started as a low chuckle and grew into a loud, almost maniacal sound. "You think freeing a few slaves changes anything?" Gray's voice dripped with contempt. "I have an entire fleet at my command. One ship's rebellion means nothing." Tom smiled and pressed another button on his control panel. Every screen in the room suddenly filled with data: ship locations, crew manifests, slave contracts, and trading routes. "You mean this fleet, Captain?" Gray's laughter stopped abruptly. His silver skin turned pale as he recognized his entire operation's secret records displayed before him. "I haven't just been updating this ship's systems," Tom explained, standing up from his chair. "Every time your other ships connected to transfer data, I sent them a little gift, a program that documented everything and sent it back to me." "That's impossible," Reed whispered from behind Gray. "Our systems are isolated." "Except for the maintenance protocols," Tom corrected him. "Those have to sync across all ships to maintain fleet standards. Remember all those efficiency updates you've been sharing with the other captains? Each one carried a piece of my tracking program." Gray lunged for the nearest control panel, but his access was denied. Red text flashed across the screen. Authorization, REVOK. Oh, and I should mention, Tom continued, toggling another display, I've been broadcasting everything to the Galactic Council for the past hour. They seemed very interested in learning about your illegal slavery operation. The crew gasped. A young officer rushed in through the door. Captain, 3 Council enforcement vessels just dropped out of hyperspace. They're demanding immediate surrender. Gray spun to face his crew. Defend your ship. This is mutiny. But nobody moved. They all stared at their captain with a mixture of anger and disgust as they realized the full extent of his crimes. It's not mutiny, Tom said calmly. It's justice. Computer, display the crew's personal contract records. New images appeared, showing how Gray had secretly bound his own crew through hidden clauses and manipulated contracts. Many crew members hadn't even known they were technically slaves themselves. You enslaved us. Reed's antenna drooped in shock. Your own crew. I freed everyone, Tom explained, and I've transferred all the evidence to the Council. Every contract, every illegal sale, every hidden clause. Your entire operation is exposed, Captain. Gray's composure finally broke. You're just a primitive human. How did you manage this? That's your problem, Captain. You thought being technologically advanced made you superior. Tom walked over to the main display, bringing up images of Earth's space station. See this primitive station you found me on? It was a testing ground for our most advanced AI systems. Those clunky panels and exposed wires. Perfect cover for hiding our real capabilities. The young officer returned. The Council ships are boarding. They're already in the main airlock. And that's my cue, Tom said, pressing one final button. Every door in the engine room slid shut, sealing Gray inside with his former crew. I'd stay and chat, but I have some paperwork to file with the Council. Wait. Gray called out as Tom headed for the exit. What paperwork? Tom paused at the door. Oh, just some interesting findings about how your entire slave trading operation violated about 50 different Council laws. Plus, I'm submitting a formal petition for Earth to join the Galactic Council as a senior member, given our demonstrated ability to overcome hostile alien technology. The door slid open, revealing a team of Council enforcement officers. Their weapons were trained on Gray. He's all yours, Tom told them, stepping aside. I believe the charges are slave trading, crew exploitation, and, he grinned, being outsmarted by a primitive species. As the Council officers led Gray away in restraints, Tom could hear the former captain muttering. But they were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be simple. Tom watched them go, then turned to address the freed crew. Now, who wants to learn how Earth really handles advanced technology? 1 month after Captain Gray's arrest, Tom stood before the Galactic Council in their grand chamber. The massive room was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all gathered to hear Earth's petition for membership. So, the Council leader, a tall being with crystalline features, addressed the chamber. We have reviewed the evidence provided by Thomas Wilson regarding the slave trading operation. All 7,000 contracts have been nullified, and the victims have been returned to their homeworlds. Tom nodded, standing confidently in his simple Earth uniform. Behind him sat several former crew members from Gray's ship, including Officer Reed, who had chosen to testify against their former captain. However, the Council leader continued. There is another matter to discuss. Earth has hidden its true technological capabilities from the galactic community. Some members view this as troubling. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Tom stepped forward to speak. With respect, honored Council, he began, his voice clear and steady. Earth didn't hide its capabilities out of malice. We hid them out of necessity. Our history taught us that when advanced civilizations discover less developed ones, the results are often tragic. He gestured to the freed slaves in the audience. Captain Gray's actions proved we were right to be cautious. But now, we're ready to share our knowledge. particularly our advances in AI safety protocols and system security. Reed stood up from his seat. If I may speak. At the council's nod, he continued, a month ago, I thought humans were primitive. Now I've seen their true capabilities. They don't just match our technology. In some ways, they've surpassed it. Their approach to AI safety alone could have prevented countless accidents in our fleet. The council leader's crystal features shimmered thoughtfully. And what of the other human nations? Are they aware of these capabilities? Tom smiled. Every nation on Earth has contributed to our advancement. That primitive space station. It was an international effort. Those exposed wires and basic panels. They hide quantum computers and advanced AI systems. We learned long ago that looking harmless is sometimes the best defense. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing Earth's true technological achievements. Zero-point energy research, quantum computing networks, advanced AI safety systems, and more. We don't seek to dominate, Tom explained. We want to collaborate, to share knowledge, to prevent others from suffering what Captain Gray's victims endured. The council chambers erupted in discussion. After several minutes, the council leader raised a hand for silence. Thomas Wilson, the leader announced, your actions have freed thousands and exposed a criminal enterprise that has plagued our galaxy for decades. Moreover, Earth's demonstrated technological prowess, combined with your ethical use of that power, has impressed this council. The crystalline being stood to full height. We accept Earth's petition for membership, not as a junior member, but as a full partner in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Applause filled the chamber. As it died down, another council member spoke up. And what of Captain Gray? He and his fellow slavers will face justice, the leader declared. But more importantly, their actions have led to a new law. From this day forward, any attempt to enslave another species will be met with immediate expulsion from the council and severe penalties. Tom couldn't help but smile at the irony. Gray's attempt to enslave one human had not only failed, but had led to the end of slavery in council space altogether. As the session concluded, Reed approached Tom. You knew, didn't you? From the very beginning, you knew exactly what you were doing. Let's just say, Tom replied with a grin, that sometimes the best way to spring a trap is to let yourself be caught in it first. As they walked out of the council chamber, Tom's communicator buzzed with a message from Earth. More stations were dropping their primitive disguises, revealing their true capabilities to their new galactic neighbors. The age of hiding was over. Somewhere in a council detention cell, Captain Gray watched the news of Earth joining the council. His plan to enslave humanity had done more than fail. It had helped humanity take their rightful place among the stars.